Hello, and welcome to the Reluctant EV Owner YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to cover my second long trip in my Tesla Model Y. The first one, which I made a video about, was from my father's house to my own house, and now the next one is actually the return journey going from my house in Surrey to my father's house in North Yorkshire. I had no trouble with the first long journey, so I was kind of expecting the same, but unfortunately this second long journey turned out to be a bit of a nightmare for various reasons, which I will go into more detail. But fundamentally, at least from the Tesla perspective, the two big problems were accessing Grok, which I'm going to make another video about how great I think Grok is in Tesla, but in this instance, it wasn't. And the second one was the navigation, which again, I don't know how much that is integrated with Grok, because I was asking Grok to change some of the navigation, but fundamentally the navigation to Superchargers on this journey was diabolical. The context of this is that I'm going to do a long trip going from my house in Surrey to my father's house in North Yorkshire. I had set the route in the app and sent it to the car with an expected destination of 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd charged the car overnight on the cheap rate, 7p per kilowatt hour, so that come 6 o'clock in the morning, it was fully charged and ready to go. The trip that was planned in the app included a stop at Annesley for a supercharge. That's quite a long way into the journey. I know that I need to stop for a comfort break before then, so the plan was to get in the car, set off, get so far into the journey, then use Grok to find a suitable supercharger that was more aligned to when I'd need to stop for a comfort break, about an hour and a half to 2 hours into the journey. I've used Grok to do that before, and it worked really well. I set off on my journey with 302 miles of range. Once I was settled in and comfortable, I did the long press of the right-hand button on the steering wheel to invoke Grok and asked it to find a supercharger station that was about an hour and a half into the journey. It seemed to think about it for a while, but actually didn't come back with any response, which is all a bit odd. The screen was displaying something, but it's down in the bottom left of the screen, and it was a bit difficult to read while I was driving. So I ended up pulling over to see what was happening with Grok. After playing about on the Tesla screen and getting some QR codes and things and using my phone and the app on the phone, it was sending me to some websites, but it was saying that I was blocked. I didn't know why. I was trying to sign in and just I couldn't get into Grok at all. I was trying multiple accounts. I do have Premium X account, which allows me the Grok access, but it was like just didn't work. I was blocked. I couldn't get it unblocked, so I had to set off on the journey without Grok. I had no idea what the problem was, but figured that I wasn't going to waste time sat around trying to fix it. I would worry about it later. So when I was on the M25, I did try again to invoke Grok, and it worked. So I was then able to ask Grok to find a supercharger en route, which it did. I'll come on to that in a minute, because that was also problematic. But whilst I'm on Grok, so further along in the journey, because I was using Grok to check various things, including the range and whether I'd need another stop, I hit a limit, and it just said that I'd used my allowance for Grok, and it was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize I had a limit, but I guess I did. And that led to a whole nother raft of, well, what account am I using for Grok, which is a minefield. And I really don't know where I stand. So sometimes it seems that you don't need to sign in and Grok gets used. Sometimes it gives this blocked dialogue, no idea why. And so I've gone from, oh, I think Grok is a great thing in the Tesla, to it's a great thing when it works, but I'm not quite sure. I don't have the confidence that it's going to work every time. I don't know why sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what account I'm supposed to be using. I don't know whether I'm signed into that account or not. I don't know whether I'm going to hit a limit. So all these things are very, very buggy. And I'm sure that it says that Grok integration is beta, but it's such a great feature, but it's so frustrating that it doesn't always work. So, on to the trip planning problems that I encountered on this journey. I was using Grok in order to find a supercharger station, and Grok is really good because it integrates with the trip planner and it can update, it can add in new stops, and it can remove stops. It's really quite good when it works. So I'd decided that the convenient stop was going to be Newport Pagnell. It was the right distance into the journey. It would be the time when I'd be ready to have a comfort break and to get a coffee. So Grok changed the trip plan to go to Newport Pagnell Supercharger. I was coming up to where I know Newport Pagnell is, and there's a junction just before the service station, and I was being directed off, and I thought, oh, that's a bit odd, but I'll go with what I'm being told. So I came off the M1 at the junction as being instructed, went along a few roads, around some roundabouts, and then I ended up at the entrance to the southbound services for Newport Pagnell. Now, bearing in mind, I'm going north, and there is a supercharger station on the northbound service station, but I was being directed to the southbound, and not only was I directed to the southbound, I was directed to an entrance to the southbound where there was access restrictions. But I could see the Tesla superchargers. They were just the other side of the sign that said authorized access only or hotel guests. And I then had to make the decision, do I risk it? Am I going to get a fine for the post if I go through this? But I kind of didn't want to go all the way back because I added about probably 15 minutes onto my journey by deviating me to go to the southbound rather than the northbound services. So I did risk it, and I drove through the authorized access only sign and stopped and charged my Tesla at the southbound Newport Pagnell, when really it should have been very, very simple, that I should have stayed on the M1 at the junction that I was told to turn off, just go to the next services and park at the Tesla supercharger there. So the whole Newport Pagnell being instructed to go to the wrong one, it's just chaos, stupidity. So I asked Grok to explain itself. Why had it directed me to the southbound when I was on a northbound journey? And it kind of said, oh, this is a known problem. It's like, oh, okay, but if it's a known problem, why isn't it getting fixed? So anyway, I was pushing Grok to try and find out, to say, don't do it in future. And that's when I hit the limits. Yeah, so I got the message saying, I've used all my Grok limits for today, and I couldn't get Grok to interact anymore. Very frustrating. So skip forward an hour and a half, and I'm ready for another comfort break and want to also supercharge while I stop for a comfort break. So again, I ask Grok, and it seems to fire up again this time, and I ask it for a stop, and it keeps telling me to use stops, supercharger stations that I've already passed. I'm heading north, and it keeps telling me to use the one at Leicester, which I've already passed Leicester. It tells me to use the one at Woodall when I've already passed Woodall. So it just seems that it couldn't understand that even though there were plenty of superchargers that were in the northbound direction, it wanted me to turn round and head south to a supercharger that I'd already gone past. It was crazy. I tried to interact and explain that to it, but it wasn't having any of it. So I decided to stop at the Annesley Supercharger, which was the one that was in the original trip plan before I set off, and charged there and expected that to be my final stop. But it wasn't. I followed the instruction, and I'm sure that I stopped the time that it was saying I needed to stop in order to complete my journey. And so I set off again, and almost immediately it said that I needed to do another stop. And I wasn't quite sure then what was happening. I thought I had enough charge to get me to the end of the journey, but I was being told I needed to stop again. So I ended up erring on the side of caution and deciding to do another charging stop. I arrived at the final destination with 35 miles of range. So yeah, I did need that extra stop. Good job I didn't risk it. I did find it rather confusing. I'd set off expecting to do 1, possibly 2 supercharger stops, and ended up doing 3. So, as if the Grok problems and the trip planning supercharge confusion wasn't enough on this journey, there was another factor that has highlighted some limitations of the Tesla autopilot traffic-aware cruise control. It was raining. The weather was pretty bad, and in several sections, the traffic-aware cruise control was giving alerts whereby it was restricting my speed. Now, I was perfectly happy driving in that condition at 70 miles an hour. I didn't think the visibility was that bad, but the traffic-aware cruise control was limiting the speed, which I thought was unnecessary. It does say in the manual that this can happen, but I don't think that the weather conditions were so severe that we had to reduce the speed. So how does the trip compare in terms of the range accuracy to the other trips that I've been doing? And as you can see, started off with 302 miles of range, and I've calculated that that was a 61% accuracy, which is the worst so far. And part of that will be because I haven't taken into consideration when I did the range that I did the detour to the southbound Newport Pagnell service station supercharger rather than northbound, because that was mileage that I didn't have to put on. It was completely unnecessary. So I'm not going to say, oh, well, we only covered this many miles, because we ended up covering more miles because of the stupid error in the trip planning system. We started off with 302 miles of range and got to our destination with 35 miles of range. The stops added about 140 miles of range. So I've calculated that the real start range was 184 miles is what I could have achieved on that charge, not 302. And that gives an accuracy of 61%, which is not great. As I've covered in another video, that range that's displayed is really a bit fictitious. This is The Reluctant EV Owner. If you have liked this video, please press the like button, please subscribe, and please add some comments. I've now made several videos about Tesla and EVs in general, so if you get the chance, please take a look at some of my other videos. Until next time, thank you.